It's hard to say how I ended up where I am today. I've always been one of those guys who shunned those who were different. I mean those with physical disabilities, mental disabilities, or some kind of health problem that made them seem different. That was until I met Karen. Karen was blind. She wasn't born blind. She was in the military and had a tragic accident that caused her blindness. She was beautiful. I didn't know she was blind when I first saw her. She seemed to be just standing at the airport as if waiting to be called for her flight. Karen is just over 5 feet 5 inches tall. Beautiful brown hair, perfectly manicured long fingernails and lovely hands. Her legs were on display because of her short skirt that stopped just below mid-thigh. Adjoining her legs was a very nice butt. Her butt was neither too big nor too small, it was just amazing to look at. Her breasts matched her torso perfectly. If I were to guess the size of her breasts, I would estimate them to be a large B cup or perhaps a small C cup. Since the skin on her legs and arms was exposed, I couldn't see any flaws. I was already 10 feet away from her when I noticed her. Her face was as beautiful as the rest of her. Her button nose was supported by the sunglasses she wore, so I didn't know what color her eyes were. Her lips framed perfect teeth when she smiled. Her teeth were pearly white and screamed, "Look at me when I smile." I heard my flight being announced, and I thought I would never see that woman again. I could only hope that I would. As I headed toward the tunnel leading to my flight, I noticed a young woman approaching her. She just spoke quietly to her and escorted her down the same route as me. At least she would be on the same flight. I just couldn't understand why she was being escorted like that. I began to think that she might be mentally retarded. It seemed like she couldn't find her way around on her own without help. It was a little confusing to me. I had never encountered anyone like her before. I had a seat near the wing. I always tried to get a seat near the wing because it gave me an amazing sense of serenity as I watched the wings cut through the clouds we were flying through. It was just peaceful for me. It also helped me relax while flying. I really disliked flying. The window seat above the wings was just a way to make it more tolerable for me. I had already started to look out the window when a woman who was escorting a beautiful woman into the airport terminal came down the aisle and, sitting the woman in the seat next to me, began to smirk. God, what a beautiful woman, I thought. She was even more beautiful up close. As she sat down, another woman whispered something to her and took the aisle seat across from her. How could one guy be so lucky? I didn't know whether to sit next to the mentally ill or to thank my lucky stars that this beautiful woman would be sitting next to me on our long flight from London, England to Houston, Texas and the good old USA. I also knew that since it was late evening, we would probably take a nap during the flight. We would arrive in Houston sometime around mid-morning the next day. Well, I was ready to fly anyway. I had a long flight ahead of me, and there was a pretty woman sitting next to me. I thought I might not be able to strike up a good conversation, but at least I had a pretty woman sitting next to me. I had some serious eyes, which I could appreciate by casting cautious glances in her direction. I knew we'd at least strike up some kind of conversation. I tried to think of where to start. I hoped she wouldn't think I was an annoying armchair neighbor and we could make the most of what we had. I also thought that maybe, hopefully, she wasn't the mentally disturbed type. Hi, I began. A typical beginning, I thought. My name is Eddie McDonald. She replied in the same vein. My name is Karen Childs. What are you going to Houston for, business or pleasure? I asked. I'm on my way home now. I live near Houston, in a little town north of it called Tomball, she said. And where do you live? Hey, I know where Tomball is. I live in the Baytown neighborhood. I work as a sales rep for a computer company. I've always wanted to see London, so I took a vacation, I told her. Wow, that must be great, she tells me. Do you sell systems or software for them? I was pleased that she could speak without a noticeable speech impediment. She could also think clearly. Perhaps this flight will be a pleasant one. We sell everything from A to Z when it comes to computers and everything related to them, I told her. Then I asked her, have you ever played any games online? I used to, she said sadly. She seemed to be looking down at the floor of the airplane. What do you mean by before? Before the accident. I was serving in the army station in Afghanistan when I was injured. During the terrorist attack, several of my close friends were killed. I barely made it out of the building before it collapsed. Unfortunately, the explosion made me blind, she said. I didn't know what to say about it. After all, she is a very beautiful woman, and she seems to be doing fine. After she told me those words about being blind, I felt stupid asking her about online games. I was really at a loss. But she sensed something in the tone of my voice. Please don't feel sorry for me, she told me. I'm learning to cope with it. Of course, I have a lot of help from my sister sitting across the aisle. She's helped me a lot since this incident happened. I had some kind of concussion that caused me to go blind. I had no other injuries other than a severe headache for almost 2 months. Barring that and my lack of vision, I was alive and lost at the same time. My sister Kate was a godsend. She and I always got along growing up, so this was never a problem for either of us. I love her for everything she's done for me. What did you do in the army? I mean, besides getting wounded and stuff, I asked. She explained to me that her job was to be a nurse at a forward base. They were considered to be far enough away from the enemy that they were not in danger. She mostly assisted the nurses so that they could help the doctors. Her job was more of an administrative one. She wrote reports and made sure medicines were ordered. After the medicines came in, she made sure they were put in the right places so everyone knew where to look for what they needed. She really liked her job in the military. She wanted to work in a hospital when she got out of the army. What do you think you can do now? I asked. Karen says, I'm going to help other wounded veterans get back to civilian life. I know it won't be easy for a blind girl to help, but I'm going to do it even if it kills me. The doctors don't know if my condition is physical or mental. I just know that right now I can't see. It bothered me, though. I've always avoided people like her. I mean the physical part. I knew I wasn't some kind of Don Juan. Heck, I didn't even have the looks to play the lead in any movie I'd ever seen. With my looks, I'd probably get the role of some villain or one of the cronies that always hangs around the bad guy. Although I was affable enough to attract a few pretty ladies, I wasn't someone a woman could write home about. My height was 5 feet 7 inches. I had prematurely grayed my hair, but I still had a full head of wavy brown/gray hair. My weight was average, so I wasn't fat. I didn't even look like someone who worked out at the gym more than once or twice a month. I spent most of my time indoors working or fixing computers and programs. I didn't have any Adonis tan either. Hi Karen, since we don't live that far apart, could we call you sometime, have dinner, go to a movie or something? I asked. Just then I remembered that she was blind. Damn, I'm sorry, I seem to have forgotten already. But I'd still like to take you out to dinner, if that's okay with you. Even in that short period of time, I began to feel like we could become friends. Heck, she was a veteran and lost her sight to protect her country and people like me. People like me who didn't want to join the military. I'd love to. I have to have a 2-week medical evaluation at the Veterans Hospital in Houston, so you may have to wait a couple weeks before we make any definite plans, she said. I felt really ashamed of myself when I told her we could go to the movies. At least she'd done it as a joke. I hoped she was serious about us going out later. I thought I'd like to get to know her better. We looked to be about the same age. I was 27 at the time. Hi Karen, if you don't mind me asking, how old are you? She said, I'm 22. I'll be 23 in a month. Then I said to her, maybe we could have our date as a kind of early birthday celebration? I'd love to, she said and smiled. She had beautiful teeth framed by the prettiest lips I'd ever seen. I couldn't believe I was talking to someone I had spent my whole life trying to avoid. During the time we spent together on the airplane, I had become very comfortable with her and her sister Kate. Although Kate was also a nice-looking woman, I was sure that someone like me would never stand a chance with either of these two ladies. Kate seemed very wary and suspicious of me. Over the long hours we spent on the flight, we became friends. Kate told me that as children they were always fighting with each other. Even though Karen was older, Kate seemed smarter. Kate was pretty and Karen was beautiful. Food was served on the airplane and soon we were all asleep. Karen took off her dark glasses so she could sleep more comfortably. After a while I woke up and needed to use the restroom. Try as I might, I was unable to get past Karen without bumping into her. Of course, the slight turbulence we got into at just the right moment sent me plummeting on top of her. Kate stared at me with particular concern and started to say something. I told Kate that the turbulence had caused me to land in Karen's lap and I really wanted to apologize to both of them. Karen started laughing, I started laughing, and finally Kate started laughing too, but not as hard. If I had been looking at this scene from a different angle, I might have been a little amused myself. I was standing on either side of Karen's legs, my hands rested on either side of her head, and my palms were tied firmly to the seat behind her head. Our faces were only an inch or maybe two apart. For some unknown reason, after we stopped laughing, I kissed Karen on the lips. Perhaps a little too long, but nevertheless our lips made contact. Kate took a quick sharp breath and her eyes got as big as saucers. Karen just sat there. I stood without taking my eyes off her face. I looked into Karen's eyes and saw the most beautiful brown eyes I had ever seen. Her eyes were like the big eyes of an old puppy. I kissed her again. This time, I think she actually kissed me back. At least that's what I hoped and wanted to believe. I apologized and headed for the head. On the way I pondered, what the hell had just happened? I had never acted like this before with anyone or in front of anyone. Had I really fallen in love with a blind girl? I knew I was in love with her, for she is very beautiful and very nice. Losing her sight took a heavy toll on Karen. Even her sister Kate was sweet once she recognized you. Karen, on the other hand, had everything except being blind. Back in my seat, I thought I would see that Kate and Karen had switched places. But instead, the only change was that Karen was now wearing dark glasses. Nudging her with my shoulder, I let her know I was back and wanted to sit down. She started to get up, and I told her to just lean back and I would try not to sit on her lap anymore. She had a cute, infectious, humorous smile that seemed to go from ear to ear. Karen, I said. Would you mind taking off your glasses and turning your head in my direction? Why do you want me to do this? She asked. To this I replied, to be honest, I'd like to look into your beautiful eyes. Your eyes are the most beautiful brown eyes I have ever had the pleasure of looking at. With those words, she took off her glasses and turned to face me. I noticed that tears were showing in both of her gorgeous eyes. I couldn't help myself, so I reached out my left hand and began to wipe the tears from her face with my thumb. As soon as she felt my hand touch her right cheek, she flinched. She then reached out with her right hand to my left hand and grasped it. Her touch was as soft as a cloud on a beautiful spring day in Texas. Then Karen slowly brought my hand to her lips and kissed my palm, giving me something I had never experienced in my life. Goosebumps ran up and down my spine. She felt me shivering a little and asked me, "Are you shivering or something? Are you okay?" "Yeah, I'm fine." I just felt a chill run down my back, I told her. "You sound a little weak. Are you sure you're all right?" She asked. "Can I ask you a question, Karen?" "Yes, what do you want to know?" "Can I kiss you again? I've never been in love with another woman the way I'm in love with you right now." "I'll understand if you say no," I said. She nodded, and we kissed again. This time it was more sensual than before. Our lips met, then parted. She ran her tongue over my lips, and the tonsil hockey began. Her kiss was the most exciting thing that had ever happened to me. Don't forget that I'm somewhat of a nerd. I'm not usually like that. But I definitely enjoyed her kiss. I wasn't completely inexperienced with women, but I'd never been this outgoing and outspoken with them either. We broke the kiss and took a deep breath. Kate looked at us with an uncertain expression on her face. But I think she felt some kind of concern that at some point I would just try to use Karen for my own sexual gratification and relief. We had a long time to wait before the end of the flight. We made ourselves comfortable, with Karen's head on my shoulder and my head on hers, and slept until we felt the plane begin to descend. "Karen, can I have your phone number? I'd really like to see you when you're free of your commitment to the Combat Veterans Hospital, I told her. She gave me her phone number and I gave her a business card with my work and cell number. She promised to call me as soon as she could. She even made sure Kate realized that she really wanted to talk to me. Kate was a little concerned, but agreed to help her. I gave Kate a business card too, if only to assure her that she could find out who I was. Kate, I don't know if you believe me or not, but I'd like to see Karen again very soon. I usually have a hectic schedule, but I will definitely make time to see her. I don't want you to worry about her. When and if we can go out and if it makes you feel better, please feel free to do so. I don't wish Karen any harm. I think she's as beautiful inside as she is outside. I realized then that I had misjudged people with disabilities. I also knew that I was going to turn my life around and get rid of these perceived prejudices. Eddie, she's a grown woman. She's been through a lot lately and I won't allow her to be hurt emotionally, much less physically. I hope you realize that we both only met you a few hours ago, and I'm still wary of your intentions for my older sister. Kate, not only would I like to visit you soon, but I would also like to meet your parents. I am in very unfamiliar territory myself. I know we've only known each other for 12 hours or so, but believe me when I tell you that I want to get to know Karen and your family. I hope you can understand me. Eddie, I'll talk to Karen when we get back from the airport. If she can convince me, then I'll call you myself. How does that sound? That sounds great, Kate. I don't know what's going to happen between us, but I want to find out. If there's something there, we will pursue it, I told her, smiling inwardly. The three of us walked to the baggage claim area. Kate let me escort Karen. She even showed me how to escort a blind person. When we found all of our luggage, I hugged Karen. Then I gave Kate a sincere hug as well. I needed to win her over too. I think I had already won Karen over. Now only time would tell. The first day home went well. My parents lived next door to me, so the house was not stuffy when I arrived home. When I finally pulled up to the house, it was late in the evening, and of course my mom and dad were happy to see me. Mom, Dad, I need to talk to both of you, I said. There was a look of concern on their faces. Dad told me to pack my things and come back for dinner, and then we'll talk. I told them about the trip and all the sights I was able to see. That paled in comparison to what had happened on the way home. I then told them about meeting Karen at London Heathrow Airport and of course her sister Kate. I went into detail about what had happened and what Karen and I had talked about. Mom looked at me with penetrating eyes. Dad only winked and smiled at me. I knew I had won him over, but Mom looked skeptical. I figured that when she met Karen, she would like her too. I mean, what's not to like? Okay, she's blind, but she's smart, beautiful, very outgoing, and did I mention she's very pretty? Well, that's exactly what she is, very pretty. Sometime around 10 o'clock in the evening, my cell phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but that wasn't unusual. I usually got calls from the outside to make an appointment or something, but usually not at this time of night. I answered. It was Karen. Hi Eddie, how are you? She asked. My heart fluttered as she spoke. Kate and I talked to Mom and Dad about our chance meeting at the airport in London. We, all four of us, were wondering if you'd like to come over for lunch this Sunday afternoon. I'd love to see you again. Had she forgotten she was blind? Maybe it was just a figure of speech. I replied, I need to check my schedule first. Give me a couple seconds. I waited about 20 or 30 seconds before answering. Looks like I have something planned for this day. She started to say something when I told her, my schedule says I have a date in Tombola this afternoon, but I can't find the address. Could you give me your address so I can make sure I find the place? She could be heard breathing a sigh of relief over the phone when I said that. You're a rat, she said. I apologized to her for that, and she giggled. She gave me her address, and I entered it into my address book so I would have not only her phone number, but her address as well. She said Kate wanted to talk to me. Hi, Eddie. I wanted to tell you that Karen and I told Mom and Dad about our meeting with you in London. Mom was a little excited and Dad looked a little worried. He told us that before he lets his daughter or any of his daughters date someone, he has to meet them first. I think he thinks we can't think for ourselves. Kate, tell your dad I'd feel the same way if the roles were reversed. I'd like to meet with them and get their approval. Is there anything else I need to know? No, not now. I'll give the phone back to Karen, she said. When Karen picked up the phone again, we chatted about this and that and nothing at all. Honestly, I felt like a teenager on the phone with my first girlfriend. It was the weirdest I'd felt in years. But it was also the most fun I'd had in years. I was so excited that I floated around like I was on cloud 9 until about 1 o'clock in the morning. Since it was already Sunday morning when I went to bed, I knew I needed to get some sleep if I wanted to impress her parents. I couldn't sleep for love or money. I decided to just go for a run to clear my head and hopefully tire myself out. I go home and it was already 3 in the morning. Sleep still wasn't coming. I needed to be on top of things when I met her parents later that day. I arrived at their house with half an hour to spare. When I knocked on the door, Karen was already waiting for me. She was smiling. It was so beautiful. I hugged her and kissed her left cheek, after which she led me inside. I was introduced to her parents, Sally and Dan Childs, as her new boyfriend. I know the reaction they saw on my face. My eyes got as wide as saucers and I smiled widely as I looked at Karen. I wanted to be her new boyfriend. I wanted to be her last boyfriend too. I wanted to be everything in between. Karen's father shook my hand. Her mom shook my hand discreetly, too, and Kate gave me a sisterly hug. I felt at home. Her father said that while dinner was finishing, we should head to the den. Let the inquisition begin, thought I. Eddie, I think you know how we feel about our daughters, she said in an overbearing accent. Both girls are our pride and joy. I will not sit back and watch one of them suffer. Whether it be mental or, more likely, physical. Mr. Childs, I assure you this is the furthest thing from my mind. For some reason I can't explain, I've loved Karen from the moment I met her. I assure you, if and when we go out, you will know exactly where we will be. I've even told Kate that if she wants to, she can come with us to make sure my intentions are honorable. Mr. Childs grinned as Kate entered the room and announced that dinner would be served in the formal dining room. Mr. Childs grinned and we headed out to eat. It turns out that the formal dining room is also the casual dining room. Kate acted like a smartass, but it was still funny. We had a wonderful dinner. I started to help clear the table when Mrs. Childs told me I didn't have to help with that. She and Kate could do it so that Karen and I, and of course Mr. Childs, could get to know each other better. Eddie, would you like a drink after dinner? Yes, sir, that would be fine, I replied. First of all, call me Dan. What kind of poison do you have? We have brandy, whiskey, rum, rye, or regular beer, he said. Well, if it's all the same to you, sir, I'd like a Diet Coke. I've never liked to drink much. I got drunk once in my life. It was when I graduated from high school. I woke up with a headache so bad that just the sunlight coming through the curtains in my bedroom hurt like hell. I've had probably 2, maybe 3 drinks of alcohol since then. Only back then it was special occasions. I didn't like the feeling then, and I promised myself I'd never do it again. It must have been the right decision, because he smiled and asked Karen to get me a Diet Coke. It was interesting to watch her navigate the den without bumping into anything. Even though she hadn't been home since her injury, she seemed to know where everything was. It was truly amazing. She moved with such grace that it was mesmerizing. At least to me. When she returned, she walked over to the couch I was sitting on and handed me a drink before sitting down on the other side of me. Beauty, grace, captivating smile, brains, it seems the only thing missing from her life, besides the obvious, was love. I fully intend to fix that, but only if she lets me. That Sunday night at the Child's house everything went smoothly. Her parents gave me permission to take Karen out to dinner the following Friday night. I also asked Karen if she would like to have dinner with my parents the following Sunday. She agreed and we made plans. Now I had to tell my mom and dad that we were going to have company over for Sunday dinner. We usually went out to visit, but Mom said she would love to cook for everyone. Eddie, why don't you invite Karen's family too? We can all get together and get to know each other better, Mom asked. Dad just nodded in agreement. I called Karen. Karen, my parents want Kate, your mom and your dad to come to our house this Sunday for lunch. I don't know exactly what she and Dad have planned, but could you ask your family if they'd like to attend? Of course they'll come. Even if I have to twist their arms, they'll want to come, she replied. Great, it's a date. Tell both of your parents I'm very grateful. What kind of food do they like? Mom wants to make a good impression. Dad likes to grill steaks and Mom likes to cook all kinds of dishes. So talk to your parents and ask if we need to bring anything, she said. Okay, honey, I said without hesitation. What did you just say? Asked Karen. I'm sorry. It just came out, I said. No, it's okay because I like you too, she said. Had she really fallen for me? Even if she was blind, Kate must have told her how ugly I was. I guess it's just good to see with your heart instead of your eyes. If she hadn't been blind, I probably never would have had the chance to get to know her the way I did now. Karen, last weekend you called me your boyfriend when you introduced me to your parents. This weekend when I introduce you to my parents, I'm going to tell them you're my girlfriend. Do you have a problem with that? No, I don't. I don't have a problem with it, she said. In fact, I even like it. Me too, I said. As we hung up the phone, I realized that I had already fallen in love with this woman. It should be too soon for such feelings, but I'll be damned if I hadn't fallen in love with her. I was happy. I was happy for the first time in a very long time. The next week was the longest week of my life. It seemed to stretch on and on. Even though I had a lot of work to do, I just couldn't wait to see Karen both Friday night and Saturday at noon. Friday went off without a hitch. She and I went out to dinner at the Texas Roadhouse restaurant. I wasn't sure how it was going to go. When she asked me to cut the meat for her, I almost choked on the unsweetened tea I was sipping. Only later did I realize she was referring to the porterhouse steak she had ordered. I laughed to myself, and later, when I told her what I had done, she laughed too. That girl was so much fun. She was fun to be with. Even though she was blind, her insight was second to none. We continued to date for the next few months. I was falling in love with her as much as she was falling in love with me. I knew I had to do something to help her. I just didn't know what. The doctors at the military recruiting office told her they could find absolutely nothing physically wrong. It seemed like she had forced herself to be blind. There had to be something I could do. I discussed it with her parents. I discussed it with her doctors. I asked her doctors if a psychiatrist could help. Perhaps even a hypnotist to uncover her deep feelings of guilt for being the only one of her group to survive the attack. They agreed to at least consider the possibility that the problems were caused by deep guilt. I'm sure they reassured me by saying they hadn't thought about it themselves. I know they had thought about it, but as I said, I was offended by their attitude. After discussing it with the hypnotist, he agreed to try it. He said he wasn't sure it would work, but he would try it. I was scared for Karen. I wasn't sure what feelings might awaken in her. I was also scared to think that if she got her sight back, would she still want to be with me? The hypnotist and I thought of a program we could try. I could create a program to use on the computer to burn the subliminal messages onto a disk and she could play them in the background, in a loop. The information we put on the disk was very subliminal, so much so that she felt like she was listening to some quiet music. In the music were the sounds of war. Explosions, people screaming, people suffering, going through hell and things like that. Later, she stopped hearing those sounds, and the only thing she heard was some kind of Asian music. It was very relaxing. The hypnotist and I listened carefully to the sounds to make sure it was exactly what he thought she needed to hear. When everything was settled, we discussed with her psychiatrist what we had prepared. He agreed to at least give it a try. The only stipulation he made was that she had to be in a controlled situation. This controlled situation had to be in a hospital and only in a hospital. He wanted to be sure that if she began to feel the stress of war, she could be awakened and her sanity preserved. The only thing left to do was to convince her family of this. "Mr. Childs," I began. "One of the doctors at the hospital for war veterans and I have devised a plan to help Karen. It may be somewhat risky, but it may be able to help her regain her ability to see. You know her condition is not physical. They can't find anything physically wrong. They think it may be a mental disorder blocking her vision." "Eddie, I know you're a smart guy, what are you up to?" he asked. "We're going to put her in a hypnotic state while she sleeps. We hope she will realize that it's not her fault that she didn't die while all her friends were killed in the raid on the camp." I explained the process we were going to use and how it would be applied. I wanted him to know why I was doing this. Karen means the world to me right now. My concern is that if she regains her sight, she may decide that I am not worthy of her love because I don't quite look like the perfect man worthy of her because of her beauty. "Eddie, I know my daughter. I truly believe she loves you very much. True, she doesn't know what you look like, but she knows your heart, and that's what she's come to love." I breathed a sigh of relief. He agreed to give it a try, too. We still had to talk to Karen and have her talk to the doctors. Everyone was optimistic, everyone except Karen. Karen was scared. When I talked to her about her fears, I told her about my fears. I loved Karen with all my heart. My love for her was intertwined with every fiber of my being. She surrendered and agreed to try the process. We held hands while the psychiatrist and hypnotist told Karen about the procedure. They explained why they wanted to do it in a controlled environment and what they thought she could expect if it worked. I prayed to the God I knew and prayed that everything would go as I hoped and expected. I prayed that if she regained her sight, she would not leave me. The day we went to the hospital was a day of reckoning for me. If this worked, our affair could be over. By this time, we had been together for almost 6 months. I was sure of her love, but I only doubted because of my looks. She was so beautiful that I felt out of place. The procedure was to last at least a week. None of us were sure what the result would be. We just hoped and prayed for the best. They bandaged her eyes so that the light would not frighten her. When they removed the bandages, she kept her eyelids closed. Gradually she opened her eyes. She began to cry. She could see some light but could not distinguish the images clearly. The optometrist thought that my eyesight would return to normal soon. How soon, we didn't know. Although the procedure was successful, I was still skeptical. I wanted her to see, and then I didn't want her to see. I took time off work to be with her as much as possible. I wanted her to see me the first thing she would see if she regained her full vision. I was scared. Only time would tell. I spent the next 2 weeks in her room when she was awake. We talked about everything. I kept talking about how I was afraid she wouldn't like the way I looked. She assured me that wouldn't happen. Like I said, she had the insight to see the good in almost any situation. When I wasn't around, her mom, dad, or sister was there for her. Even my parents filled in for her sometimes. They kept a picture of her and me taken on Valentine's Day a few months earlier. If I wasn't around, they promised me that they would make sure she saw that picture. At 2 o'clock on Sunday morning, I got a call from her father. Karen was awake and wanted to see me. I broke every law I knew to get to her. When I entered her room at 3 o'clock, she was sitting on the edge of the bed crying. I asked her what was the matter. She jumped up and rushed to me. Grabbed me, hugged me, and kissed me like there was no tomorrow. I started crying, and so did her father. "Eddie, I love you," she said. "You helped me see again. You didn't quit when everyone else did. You have no idea what that means to me." It was hard for me to say anything as I cried tears of joy. I also knew that we should thank the God I had prayed to. Even the doctors on duty that night said that a great miracle had occurred. When her regular doctors came the next morning, the whole floor was abuzz with unusual activity. The entire staff was floating in the air. A serious change could be seen in everyone. Both the hypnotist and the psychiatrist were amazed at what had happened. They agreed that what the hypnotist and I had come up with was the deciding factor in her recovery. They had to revise their method of treatment for other veterans with similar illnesses. The psychiatrist told us he wanted to see her twice a week for the next 4 weeks to make sure there were no mental health implications. We, meaning me and Karen, came every time she needed a visit. I kept an eye on her if I could help it. Finally, she told me to get to work. She needed to rest. Reluctantly, I did so. After a few months, her vision got better and better. One evening after work, I decided to stop by her house. As I pulled up to the house, I saw a truck that I didn't recognize. As I passed by the window of their house, heading for the front door, I noticed Karen hugging some guy. This guy was pretty cute. I just turned around and walked away. I didn't know what to do. My heart was broken. After not calling her that night or the next, she finally called me. "Eddie, what's wrong? You haven't called me in 3 days." "I don't know what's going on," she said. I told her the truth. "I stopped by your house the other day. I saw a pickup truck in your driveway. When I walked over to ring the doorbell, I looked out the window of the house and saw you cuddling with some guy. I couldn't deal with it and figured you'd left me for him." She started to laugh. "Eddie is my cousin. He just got back from the Marines the day before. He heard about me losing my sight there, but he didn't know about the recovery. When he rang the doorbell, he was surprised that I recognized him because he thought I was still blind. He was so happy for me that he grabbed me and hugged me. That must have been when you came in." She went on to tell me, "Eddie wants to meet my hero. He can't believe you've done so much for me. He told me that you're going to be famous among veterans who have the same disease as me. He also said that these are the kind of people who make real heroes." I felt like an idiot. "Karen, I'm sorry I jumped to the wrong conclusion. Can I come over right now?" "You'd better come soon. He wants to take you and me out to dinner, and I'm already hungry," she said. Our houses aren't that far apart, but when you have to deal with Houston traffic anytime after 3 in the afternoon, those 65 miles can take 2 hours. That's the way it turned out. Maybe I can figure out something to deal with the traffic in this city. When I arrived, it was already 7 o'clock. Karen ran up to my car and rushed over to hug and kiss me. That's when I noticed the guy I had seen a few days ago standing there smiling at me. He looked like a pretty big guy. Good thing I didn't have to run into him. One of us would have gotten hurt, but I'm sure it wouldn't have been him. "Eddie, this is my cousin Frank Johnson. He's my mother's brother's son. We're proud of him for doing what he does in the Corps." Then, turning to Frank, she says, "Frank, this is my hero and savior, Eddie McDonald. I'm so proud of what he's done. I owe him my future." "Frank, nice to meet you. Did Karen tell you what I thought I saw the other day?" I asked. "Yes, sir, she did," he replied. "She also told me how you met." He smiled the whole time he said it. "We went out to dinner, just the 3 of us. We had Mexican food. Houston is well known for its Mexican food. We talked about their youth and, of course, my youth. We got to know each other pretty well. Frank is a good guy, as he was for a Marine." When Karen excused herself to powder her nose, Frank asked me, "Eddie, do you love Karen?" "I know she loves you." "Yes, I love her very much," I told him. "If you decide to get married, please contact me so I can attend the ceremony. You have no idea how much this means to me." "Frank, we haven't even discussed anything like this yet." Her eyesight has only recently returned to her. We're still trying to figure out what she's going to do for the rest of her life. She wants to become a registered nurse. Then she can help veterans. It's gonna take 4 years. I want her to realize her dream, too. "If I know my cousin," Frank began, "she probably wants to spend the rest of her life with you, no matter what you decide to do or where you live. I know she loves you, just like Aunt Sally and Uncle Dan. Heck, even Kate likes you, and that's saying something. Frank, I'd like nothing better than to spend the rest of my life with her. I want to make sure she's happy with me." Karen was already approaching and we stopped talking. Just watching her walk in our direction made me smile. God, she was so beautiful. The best part is that she loves me for who I am, not what I look like. Together, we probably looked like the Disney movie Beauty and the Beast. Guess which one of them I look like? Time started doing what it usually does and kept moving forward 1 second, 1 minute, 1 hour and 1 day at a time. My love for Karen was also moving forward. Our budding love was moving in the right direction. Karen and I had known each other for a year and a half. We seemed to be on solid ground. Our dates began to include movies she wanted to see. I was happy to take her along. Finally, after we had been dating for almost 2 years, I asked her where she thought we were going. We hadn't made love yet, but we were doing some very intense petting. Neither of us were virgins, but we were definitely stretching our relationship by not getting intimate. Eddie, you know I love you. I want to be with you. Karen, you are the love of my life. I want to be with you too. She took my hand and kissed me with a depth I had never experienced from her or anyone else. Our kissing continued until we were both high on love. Our hormones began to take over our minds. I was as hard as I had ever been before. At this point, I could have shattered an anvil. Finally, we broke off the kiss and decided to go home to her. I couldn't trust myself to take her to mine. I know if we went to my house, we wouldn't get out of bed for 3 days. Wednesday afternoon, I left work early. I went to the mall in Baytown. There are 3 different good jewelry stores there. It took me 4 hours to navigate through all the rings they have. This ring had to be perfect. It had to reflect my love for her and the love she now has for me. I wanted it to speak to the fact that she was blind but can now see. When the last jewelry store showed me a 1-carat black diamond ring set in white gold, I knew I had found what I needed. The black diamond was a rare gem. The stone set in white gold made the black diamond even more beautiful. The engagement ring came with a matching wedding band. There was a matching engagement ring for me too, which replicated the engagement and wedding ring, but without the black diamond. Instead of a large diamond, I chose 2 small black diamonds for the man's ring that were placed parallel to my finger. Overall, the set was perfect FO. Are the two of us? The black diamond represented Karen's darkness to me because of her blindness. The white gold symbolized Karen's return to the world of sight and a bright future. Since I had never married and was making good money, I decided to pay cash for the $17,000 set. I planned to propose the following weekend. Her 24th birthday was approaching, and I was thinking about proposing to her when we went out to celebrate. When we were at the Olive Garden restaurant, a guy approached our table. You could tell by the way he was dressed that he didn't work there. He was dressed in a business casual suit. "Excuse me, but may I speak to your companion?" he asked. I replied, "And who are you?" "My name is Robert McClelland," he said. At that moment, surprise appeared on Karen's face. Obviously, she knew this guy. "Oh my God, I thought it was you," she said, getting up and hugging him. "What's up, Karen?" "I'm fine now, thanks to Eddie." "What do you mean?" he asked. "Eddie practically saved my life. I was injured while serving in the army overseas. I lost my eyesight, but with his help I got better. Eddie is a computer expert and he helped create a program that helped me get through everything. I think veterans will start using his program to help others like me," she said. "I heard you were injured. But I didn't know how serious." "I'm glad you're feeling so well," he stated, taking a seat next to her. I didn't really like this guy anymore. He was acting like I wasn't even here. Like he was trying to hit on her. "Eddie," he began. "Karen and I were sweethearts back in 10th grade. We dated until graduation. She decided to join the army and I went to college. We haven't seen each other since we graduated. Of course, I'm happy to see her. She's still as beautiful as she was then." Then I said to him, "It was nice to meet you, but if you'll excuse us, we have a date." "I see," he said, like it was a joke. Then he turned to Karen and said, "Karen, if you're not busy this weekend, I'd like to call you so we can reminisce about old times." Karen said, "That sounds like fun. Where would you like to go and on what day? I thought Friday night would be good for me, and we could go out to eat to talk. That would be fun, Karen said. I just sat there stunned. I thought Karen and I had something special. I was going to propose to her that very night. Now I wasn't sure about anything. She had just made a date with an old acquaintance of hers and hadn't even asked me what or who I had planned for the weekend. We spent time together almost every weekend. I knew she was too beautiful for me, but I didn't think she would just brush me off like that. I was heartbroken. They kept talking about old times, and I sat stunned. Finally, she noticed the expression on my face. It was an expression of hurt, pain, rejection, and probably other descriptive words I just can't express. She almost, and I mean almost, started apologizing to me. She began to explain that she and Robert had actually dated in high school. At the very least, she asked if I would mind if they went out Friday night to reminisce about old times. My only response was a disappointed, sure, probably not. I sat there thinking about how all good things come to an end sooner or later. I couldn't believe that just a few days ago she was confessing her love to me and telling me it was forever. And here she is already telling me that she's going out with her ex-boyfriend on Friday, as if I had no choice. I also wondered if I could get my money back for the engagement ring set. I lost my appetite and decided I wasn't that hungry after all. Robert finally left the table, but not before getting her phone number. I'm sure she noticed how my behavior had changed in the last 10 minutes. Life was starting to suck again. I didn't want to go on living without her. What could I say? We'd never talked about an exclusive relationship, so maybe it was for the best. When Friday came, I decided to wait outside her house to see if they would go outside. I wanted to see how she would dress for him. Would she dress better? Would she think of me when she was with him? What are they going to do? Something was going on in my head. I hadn't been able to concentrate on work since Wednesday night when Robert came on stage. All I could think about was Karen and how much I loved her. Why is she doing this to me? I thought. Right at 7 o'clock he showed up at her house. He rang the doorbell, and Karen answered, looking like $1 million. She always looked like that. My heart ached even more. I couldn't follow them even if I wanted to. I just wanted to know if she was really going to go out with him. I went home and cried. I hadn't cried like that in years. Mom came over after noticing I was home and asked where Karen was. Mom, last Wednesday when we went to celebrate her birthday, a guy from her past saw us and interrupted my plans. You know how much I love her. You know how much I've done for her. But on Wednesday, none of that mattered. She made a date with him for the evening. And off they went. I watched as he walked her to his car and then opened the door for her to get in. As they drove away, my heart was breaking. I came home and cried. Mom, what am I going to do? You know how much I love her. That son of a bitch just knocked her on the horns and she let him. Eddie, Mom said softly. I'm sure there's a good reason for what happened. Text her on her cell phone and leave a message for her to call you when she has time. Right now only she can decide whether she needs you or him. You can't control her emotions. Maybe things are as you say, maybe they just want to catch up. But, Mom, that guy is very handsome. What chance do I have compared to him? I know I'm not good with my looks. Even as a kid, I thought I had to rub raw steak on my face to get the dog to lick me. And this guy is just handsome. Listen, son, go and sleep. Maybe you'll feel better in the morning. Just don't forget to write to her. Give her a chance to explain everything before you put an end to your relationship. I think she loves you too. She's a balanced girl and has seen her share of grief. She probably just needs to realize what she has with you. Send her this message and go take a shower and then go to bed. Get some sleep. With these words, my mom kissed me on the forehead and went home. At that moment I wished I had a gun. I think I wanted to die. I did what she asked me to do. I sent Karen a text. It said, Karen, please call me when you get a chance, or at least when you get home. I want to make sure you're okay. I love you. I took a shower and went to bed. The next morning, my doorbell rang. For some reason, it sounded very loud. It was as if the house was completely devoid of furniture and wall hangings. It seemed to echo throughout the house. I went to the door and Karen was standing there. I opened the door and told her to come in, turning my back to her. I headed into the kitchen to make some coffee. I was still in a depressed state. She had noticed something was wrong with me. How could I tell her I didn't want her to date this Robert guy? We weren't exclusive like I thought we were. Karen started like this, "Eddie, what's wrong? You look like you've lost your best friend or maybe a puppy. Talk to me, Eddie. Tell me what happened." Karen, until yesterday, that we were in love with each other. And then this Robert came over to the table at the restaurant on Wednesday, tooted his horn and ruined our date. It seemed to me that you were more interested in catching up with him than being with me. I have to admit, I was feeling down. I know we've never talked about an exclusive relationship, but I thought. "Stop right now, Eddie." She almost shouted. "I thought you knew how I felt about you. Robert and I dated in high school. Yes, we were lovers. But we were never together as lovers. We never had sex. We both wanted to wait. That's in the past. For your information, Robert is married with 2 children. His wife and kids met us at a restaurant last night. I didn't get home until after 3 o'clock this morning. The reason I didn't call you is because of the time. I figured you'd be asleep by now. Now for the record, I do love you. I can't put into words how much you've done for me. Without you, I would still be blind as a bat. I see now that even though you have eyes, you can't see a damn thing. Karen, you could have at least texted me last night. I was worried about you. Well, if you check your phone, you'll see that I texted you back. I told you it was going to be late and that I'd see you in the morning. And I meant it. And here I am to prove it to you. Eddie, if I didn't love you so much, I'd wring your damn neck. Come here so I can hug and kiss you. It threw me off balance. I realized that I'd screwed up by not trusting her. I had to tell her a few more things before I could calm my nerves. Karen, first I have to say this. I love you. I love you with every fiber of my being. Robert is so good looking and I know I'm not. You have to believe me when I tell you that I still get anxiety attacks when some good looking guy just talks to you. I will never compare to you in beauty. That's how I feel. I can't help myself. You're so beautiful, it hurts me to see something like that. Last night scared the hell out of me. I just knew this guy wanted you back in his life as a lover or something. I couldn't deal with it. I went to bed last night with visions of you and him in bed together. Tell me what I'm supposed to think. I can't think right now. Oh, Eddie, she said, chuckling slightly. Robert is married, has 2 wonderful boys, a beautiful wife, and a parish in North Houston. Yes, Eddie, he's a preacher. As for me becoming his mistress, that will never happen. I love another man, and he can never come between me and the love I have for this man. Who is it? I didn't know you loved someone else. I was hoping, was all I could say before she came over and kissed me hard. After a kiss like that, who do you think I love? She said. In a squeaky voice, I asked her if it was me. She pounced on my lips with hers again. Mom came in and caught us hugging and kissing. Well, Eddie, I see you've done well, Mom said. Yeah, Mom, I guess I overreacted, I said. Yes, come to think of it, declared Karen. By the way, he said that if we decide to get married, he'd love to perform the ceremony. Good thing I didn't return the ring to the jewelry store. I followed Karen to my parents' house. We got there around noon. Her mom had prepared lunch for everyone. My parents were there too. Since everyone was there, I decided it was the perfect time to propose to Karen. I asked her dad, Dan, if we could talk to him. We went out to the backyard and talked. Dan, I've never hidden the fact that I love Karen. I love her like I've never loved anyone. I know not many people look up to me. When I see a picture of me and her together, all I can think of is Beauty and the Beast. But, Dan, I'm asking your permission to marry Karen. It may be old-fashioned, but that's the way I was raised. If you have any objections, I understand. Eddie, the only thing I can object to is if you decide that you and she don't want to have children in the future. Sally and I want grandchildren, but we want their parents to love them the way we love our children, he said, smiling. I'd like to propose to her today, if that's okay with you, I said. Dan only smiled as we entered the house. The place was as loud as a crowded diner. Everyone was smiling, and everyone looked happy. Karen, Kate, and my mom were chatting and bantering with each other. Sally and my dad were sampling the food. Everyone was in a very jovial mood. All I had to do was stand there and smile as I knew everything was going to be okay. Lunch was served. There was old music playing in the background. Dan disappeared right after we finished eating. I thought he had gone to the restroom, but he returned a few minutes later, grinning from ear to ear. He had something behind his back that I couldn't see. When everyone was seated in the family room, I began my well-rehearsed speech. Can I get everyone's attention? I have something to say. I looked first at Dan, then at Sally and finally at Karen. Karen, you know how much I love you. You also know that I feel like I'm in the Disney movie Beauty and the Beast when I'm around you. I didn't realize how much I love you until recently. I then got down on one knee in front of her and everyone else in the room. Karen, will you marry me? Of course, I failed the whole speech. But I got through it. Apparently, I got the message across, too. Yes. Not only will I marry you, but I'll bear as many children as you want. When I put the wedding ring on her finger, the whole house erupted with cheers and screams from the women. Of course, all the ladies wanted to see it. I was the only one besides Dan who knew what was going to happen. Dan and my father walked over to me and we hugged. At that moment Dan pulled a bottle of wine from behind his back. Sally went to get glasses for everyone and we all raised a toast to Karen and I getting engaged. This was one occasion where I would definitely drink alcohol. I wasn't sure what the future held for us, but I prayed that we would be together forever. I knew that Karen and I still had some things to clear up between us. I knew she wanted to go to school and get her nursing degree. Not only would that be possible with her VA benefits, but it would guarantee her a job anywhere she wanted to work. In addition, she wanted to help veterans as much as possible. Her plate was full and she hadn't even started eating yet. The girls spent the next 4 months planning the wedding. Only I, my father and her father stayed out of all the preparations. They would ask us questions from time to time and we would just nod and say it sounded good. None of us had any idea what the hell they were talking about or what they were agreeing to. As far as I knew, we were going to get married under the sea in a dome. But I wouldn't have minded. As long as we got married. It was time for the marriage ceremony. Her friend, the Reverend Robert McClelland, performed the ceremony. He actually turned out to be a pretty nice guy. Sometimes first impressions aren't the best. When he announced to us, husband and wife, you may now kiss the bride, I did. That kiss was probably even hotter than the one when we almost got out of control. The reception was nice, but I felt like it went on too long. Finally, we left there to start our honeymoon. We flew to New York to see Niagara Falls. We did see the falls, but not very much. Karen and I remained chaste while we were dating. We wanted to save everything for our honeymoon. The entire trip was spread out over 5 days. We left the hotel twice. Once to see a waterfall and once to go to a nice bistro in New York City. The rest of the time we stayed in the room. When we got hungry, we ordered room service. Our first night together can only be described as heaven on earth. It seemed like mountains were moved that night. We made tender love and had crazy sex. Karen was even more beautiful in the nude. Everything was as perfect as I had imagined. I couldn't find a single flaw on her body. Believe me, I looked everywhere. She's a real brunette. I get goosebumps when I think about having a wife. The lovely Karen Childs McDonald. Gorgeous. Finally settling into my home in Baytown, we discussed her desire to become a nurse. "Karen, I know you want to be a nurse. Why don't you give it a try? Take it to the next step. Become a physician's assistant, or better yet, a doctor." Karen said, "Eddie, I don't know if I have it in me to want to be a doctor. First of all, I still want to be a nurse. I want to help veterans, especially those wounded veterans who are coming home. I want to help them transition back into civilian life. I just don't know what I need to do to accomplish that. Would you be willing to support me in my efforts to do all of this? You know you will. No matter what happens, I will support you no matter what you decide to do. I know you will succeed, whatever it is." She smiled at me, took my hand, and led me to the bedroom. As we lay in bed, we were still talking about our future. We wouldn't have children so she could focus on her studies. Karen is 25 now. She feels like she's caught up too late to get that kind of education and compete with the young people who have already gotten their chosen profession. I know she will succeed, whatever her decision is. Just as we agreed that she should continue her education, the Department of Defense called. They wanted to talk to me about a program I had created. We set up a time for me to come to them and discuss the options they wanted or felt were appropriate. It seemed like Monday was going to be a busy day for me. When I arrived, I was greeted by several staff members. 6 veterans who had undergone the procedure were also there. All 6 had been cured of the trauma of war-induced blindness. That in itself made me feel more confident in what I had done not only for Karen, but for them as well. A total of 15 people attended the event, including myself. Basically, they told me that they wanted me to write a formal proposal allowing them to use the program to benefit all other veterans across the country. They also asked to see if the program could be modified to help other veterans suffering from PTSD. I agreed to test this idea. And I did test it. I developed a complete package of services for them. When we had our next meeting 4 months later, I talked about what I had done and what could be accomplished. Everyone unanimously agreed that this program could work. Of course, we all understood that the success of the program would depend solely on the individual veteran. They offered me X dollars for writing and helping to administer the program. I told them I would contact them with any questions within a week. I also told them to continue to use the current program to help everyone they could. I talked it over with Karen. She thought it would be a great gift for the veterans, and I couldn't agree more. She and I came up with a proposal that we thought would work and that the veterans would agree to. I called my contact and set up another meeting. I asked that their medical administrator attend the meeting. A date was set. Karen and I went to the next scheduled meeting. We explained the nature of the program to them. Our proposal was that the VA would give Karen a full scholarship to attend the VA hospital in Houston. They would provide her with all the training she would need to become a registered nurse and physical therapist. All proceeds from the program would go to the VA to help offset the cost of the program for those who are offered treatment. I would receive a token fee for running the program. We, Karen and I, wanted the program to benefit the veterans, not some institution or private organization. If and when the program is adopted for use by the general public, it would still be administered solely through the VA. There were a few other minor details, but as I said, these were purely legal issues. 2 weeks later, Karen and I, their attorneys, my attorneys and myself met and signed the contract. It was more our way of helping the wounded veterans of this country than a way to make a lot of money. I guess in medicine, when a new procedure is introduced, there is always a big score to be made. Karen and I wanted to make sure that no one could make a profit using this program. Our attorneys also got us a patent and protected the procedure and any changes to it. Karen started her new CR the following January when she attended her first class. She was so excited that all weekend we were both seething with excitement. The love I received and the love she received could have gone into the Guinness Book of World Records. Who would have thought that a simple chance encounter in a London airport could lead to such a life-changing event for possibly thousands of veterans in our country? A year after Karen graduated from the program and training, another wonderful event happened in our lives. Karen and I were expecting our first child. Both of our parents were excited about the impending birth of their first grandchild. Karen and I were beyond happy. Even Kate was happy. Her skepticism during our first meeting in London had turned into an optimistic view of the future. Only 3 months later, Karen was told that there were complications with her pregnancy. She would have to stop classes and not work until the baby was born. 3 months after that, Mark Daniel MacDonald was born healthy and happy. Karen resumed her studies when the next semester began. Everything in our lives seemed to be working out better than I could have imagined. I was still employed by the computer company I worked for. I had gained public recognition for the program the VA was now using, and I commended the company for giving me time off for everything I was doing. Of course, they were riding a wave of popularity and it helped their business grow too. I was offered a salaried position, which meant more time at home and less time away from my family. Naturally, I accepted. Karen was doing great with her studies and work. 4 years later, after earning her registered nurse degree and a minor in physical therapy, Veterans offered her a newly created position to assist with the Wounded Veterans Program. She plans to continue her education to eventually become a counselor for these veterans. Our son Mark is now 5 years old and will soon have a brother or sister. It seems like life is only getting better. Tragedy struck before our second child was born. A veteran with PTSD had a seizure and attacked those helping him recover. Karen was injured and we lost a child. Karen would recover in a few months, but the mental loss of a child can take its toll on those involved with the parents of the lost child. Karen was only 6 months old when it happened. We buried the child in her parents' family cemetery near Tomball. A year later we had to bury her father, and another 8 months later we had to bury my mother. In a short period of time, we lost 3 members of our family. As you can imagine, we were in dire straits. Something had to be done to help all 6 of our remaining family members get out of this state. Karen started looking for a family vacation spot that we could go to. It was my dad, Karen's mom, Kate, she wasn't married yet, me, Karen and Mark. We would go on vacation as a family for 2 weeks. It was going to be a place we could all go and enjoy. Kate was the only one helping Karen make the plans. The 3 of us decided to do it the week of our anniversary. Karen and I would be married for 10 years. Our marriage seemed like a match made in heaven. Yes, we had our disagreements, but nothing so serious that we could remain dissatisfied with each other for longer than a few hours. Almost all of our friends envied us. We still resembled Beauty and the Beast. Our love only grew stronger. We arrived at the resort. Karen and I paid for everything. We could afford it. My dad and Karen's mom wanted to pay for their rooms. Kate made a token offer to pay for hers, but we wouldn't listen. The fun we had helped us all mentally recover from the loss of various family members. When we got home, everyone's mood was much better. Life had dealt us a blow that we had to learn to live with. We all made it through and became one big happy family. The only unforeseen thing that happened was that during our vacation, my dad and Karen's mom started falling in love with each other. Both her dad and my mom hadn't seen each other in 2 years, and all of us kids had been urging them to get out of the house. We met some resistance on their part. And then, to my great surprise, they started dating. We didn't find out they were dating until 8 months later. 6 months later, they got married. Another unforeseen event was that Karen got pregnant again. Hopefully this time she wouldn't lose the baby. Mark was almost 8 years old when his sister, Molly Diane MacDonald, was born. We named her after my mother and my grandmother. I didn't know how life could get better. But it did. Kate met a man who was serious. They planned a wedding for early fall, and Karen was to be the matron of honor. Our son Mark started 3rd grade and was becoming quite a good student. He was also active in sports. Karen was promoted to head the Wounded Veterans Program at Houston Hospital, and I became executive vice president of my company. My new foster mom and Karen's new foster dad played dual roles as Karen's mom and my dad. It was funny when we introduced them to other friends. Mark loved the attention and Molly was growing like a weed. She was starting to look more and more like Karen. Unfortunately, she had my genes too, so she wasn't as pretty, but still cute. Mark at least got a lot of his mom's traits, so he was growing up to be a handsome young man. Nature took its course and our remaining parents eventually passed away of natural causes. I still can't believe that Karen and I met at that airport in London. A chance meeting led to a relationship I never could have imagined. We were able to retire in good health. The program I created for veterans brought in over $10 million for us personally. We immediately donated that money back to the VA to be used to help less fortunate veterans who were unable to pay their medical bills. We gladly donated this money with the expectation that it would be used to help those in need. I have no idea how much money the VA was able to charge private hospitals across the country, but it was clear that all of the proceeds would go to help veterans. Karen and I bought a nursing home near Houston so we could travel to the veterans and just socialize with them. We made 3 trips a week. Life was enjoyable for us. We realized that we could donate so much of our time that the joy we felt was worth every second. When Mark graduated from high school, he went to college, graduated with honors and joined the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps became his career. He retired with the rank of lieutenant colonel. Molly also went to college and became a physical therapist, also working for the Veterans Service. There she met and married a doctor. Karen and I are in our 70s and still in good health. We had a wonderful marriage. We decided to choose our own stones for our grave. It was a simple double ring engraving with her and my names. Under each of the names in bold letters we decided to engrave Beauty and Beast. It was our last chance to leave the affectionate expressions we called each other so that all people could laugh when they looked at our graves. We also had angels engraved on our tombstones. In our wills, we specified that all future proceeds from the program I had written would go to the Wounded Veterans Program. It was the least we could do. Our love for each other never waned. I never got over the fact that such a beautiful and intelligent woman could really love me. I never got over the fact that I had an initial prejudice against those I had previously considered undesirable. Many of these undesirable people became our close acquaintances. We loved them like family. When these people passed away, we mourned their loss as a personal loss. My ignorance almost cost me the best gift God had in store for us humans. I loved an angel from heaven. She loved her angel too. I would like to conclude this story with the following observations. Never, and I mean never, shun someone just because they are different. Love your wife as much as you can, and wives, love your husbands just as much. God has chosen life for you. If you choose to ignore His desires, you will not get the happiness He wants for you. Choose your life path carefully because what you choose today will affect the rest of your life. Enjoy the life you have. Never look over your shoulder in anything. Look forward in everything. I've only ever really loved one woman in my life. Her name was Karen Childs. I would never have known such happiness if I had chosen to treat her the way I had always treated others like her. I regret nothing in my life, except that I didn't learn to love without exception when I was young. I can now honestly say that I have no preconceived notions. My children also live with this philosophy in their lives. You never know what can happen when you go into life with an open heart and an open mind.